Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. My name is Christine Devlinek. The Sacred Window refers to the tender, magical, and remarkable weeks following the birth of a baby. A birth giver is forever changed. Recognizing that this time is too often overlooked and misunderstood in our modern culture, we're setting out to be part of a voice for change and growth. We're growing awareness and broadening the reach of conscious postpartum care. Our podcast features friends and colleagues as interviewers. We're a loving community united by a common passion to change the paradigm of postpartum care to one that honors women, birth givers, babies, and families. We're glad you're here.
And I will never be the same again.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Eck. I'm the director of the Center for Sacred Window Studies and the Postpartum Care Collective. Welcome to this talk tonight, this panel discussion with some amazing individuals who I've been so lucky to come in contact with through this organization. So the Postpartum Care Collective, for those of you who are new to this, this is our professional community. For those of you who have been students in our program, the Postpartum Care Collective is your alumni support and professional support moving forward. For those of you who are not students of ours, this is an opportunity for you to connect with other professionals who are caring about the same things that you care about. We do a monthly talk like this. We've got great other supportive events like case study circles and book clubs and movements specifically for birth workers. This is a really warm community who really cares and understands that postpartum is not represented enough, and it's up to those of us who understand that it needs to be stronger. It's a place for us to gather in good company. So I'm going to quick introduce my friends that are joining me for this panel discussion. This is very casual, conversational between the four of us. And I invite you, we'll sort of leave some space at the end. You're able to share in the chat to me. So I will be able to pass along questions to our panelists here. And of course, you may email us afterwards and let us know your thoughts and your ideas too, because those are all really important to us. So without further ado, I am so happy to have my teammate, Siena Butler, here with me. Siena is all of these beautiful women are alumni of our school, but Siena has stepped on board as an amazing support person. She's a both birth and postpartum doula. She lives in Virginia. She's just brilliant and takes care of publishing our blog and our Instagram and our podcast, and is just a passionate birth worker, and I'm so lucky to have her on this team. And Eunique Deann is from the San Diego area. Eunique is an artist. She's so many wonderful things. She's a birth doula, postpartum doula. Gosh, Uni, I wish I had it all written down in front of me, but what I most love about Uni is the way that she's really changed the way that I interact with this organization, that she's like transformed so much of what I know to be my path professionally, and just is just a beautiful human being that I'm blessed to know. So thank you for being here, Uni, to share your thoughts about this important topic. And our special guest is Shelley Rahim. Shelley is also in the San Diego area. Shelley is one of the most, she's just a super passionate, really busy, has a robust postpartum practice, one that all of us in this field can really learn a lot from. Shelley's worked with so many families. She also has a very long list of things that she does, but Shelley is does a lot of prenatal yoga with clients. She's, belly binding and birth story listening, and she's a cookbook author, so many things. But Shelley is really diving deep into sharing more about postpartum neuroscience and how we really need to be able to speak that language and combine that with the intuitive understanding that we have about how it's not right now, how we need to basically take what we know scientifically about the brain and create some spaciousness and love around that in the way that we understand postpartum people. Wow, thank you guys so much for being here. And yeah, Shelley, I'm going to invite you to open up the floor with what's top of mind for you right now. And Eunique and Siena, I want to invite you to jump in as you hear things or you have an idea. Don't wait for me to invite you to speak. Please just share. This is going to be a four-way conversation between all of us. So Shelley, we connected and we're talking about having you do a talk, and this is something that kind of just both of us got pretty excited about. And let's just start there. Why is that?
Yeah, I loved it that our conversation sparked this, whole live discussion. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, going back to that conversation, what we were talking about is how amazing the brain is designed for postpartum, that the brain is very plastic. It's the neuroplasticity of the brain is designed to teach parents, to teach mothers how to listen to their instincts and how to attach and bond with their baby. And so just to kind of explain, first of all, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I have studied a lot about the polyvagal theory, and I've read a lot of books on, on how the brain changes, and it's not static. It doesn't just stay the same your whole life. And I've applied a lot of what I've learned to my own healing journey and understanding how to heal from trauma, but also I've applied it to the work that I do. So it's been really fun to learn about the brain changes and also the hormone changes and just all the different physiology and the biochemistry of the pregnant and the postpartum body, and be a caregiver working, every single day, sometimes for 40 days with a mom. And sometimes I feel like I'm almost like, and I'm not an anthropologist, but I sometimes feel like I'm an anthropologist, like a longitudinal study I'm doing here, as I'm observing the brain changes over the course of 6 weeks, every single day for 8 hours with a mom. And it's interesting. So through those observations, I've been able to take, what I've learned in my own self-study about neuroscience and really deeply understand how important the caregiving is that we need to give to the mothers so that they can allow their brains to let them feel safe in the place where they need to be in order to love and nurture their babies. And so I'll just explain a little bit of what neuroplasticity is based on what I understand. And so the brain is it's always changing and growing through different phases of our lives. And one of the times that the brain is changing the most rapidly, the greatest degree of change happens is during matrescence, or during through the birth and then through the postpartum period. It's dramatic. So what scientists have done is they've tracked the brain changes, and what they've found on postpartum brains is that the prefrontal cortex, which is the neocortex, it's the newer part of our brain, and it's responsible for analyzing and logic and reason and checking emails and strategizing. And that part of our brain shrinks, and it kind of goes down, goes blank. And the part of the brain that lights up is the amygdala. And that's sort of a more primitive part. It's a very primal place in our brain. And that's where we learn things like caretaking for another human being, empathy, compassion. And so, understanding this, to me, and I also want to say one more thing, is that what modern science sort of is proving about the brain is something that indigenous cultures all around the world today and our ancestors have known, like healers and midwives and wise women since the beginning of time, taking care of postpartum mothers, have known this since the beginning of time. It's not new knowledge for them. And that is why they have created quarantines. They don't let, in India and Asia and Mexico, they don't let the moms leave the home, because they know that if her brain is being stimulated here and she has to go and like drive a car and check a grocery list, this part of her brain is not online, and it's very, very challenging for her to go there. It doesn't feel natural. And so when we take her out of her primal caretaking part of her brain and force her to go here, it causes stress, it causes cortisol to release, which doesn't allow oxytocin to flow. But most importantly, she isn't as able to attach and bond with her baby and really listen to her baby's signals and connect. So indigenous cultures, right? I work with a lot of Indian clients, and my husband, I've been married to a Pakistani man for 30 years, and with all three of my babies, I received the Asian, Southeast Asian treatment, which wasn't fully quarantining. It wasn't that strict. But a lot of my Indian clients, their moms come, and they're not allowed in the kitchen. They're literally not allowed. The moms are not allowed to step foot in the kitchen, which implies that everything is brought to her in bed. These traditions are still intact. They don't leave the home. They put cotton in the ears because they want to reduce the vata and the stimulation. So I just want to, give credit to what's, I think, already been known for so long, and but also appreciative of modern science to kind of bringing it to light in the modern time.
Yeah, it's really beautiful how, when you sort of think about it, I don't know that ancient cultures were sort of understanding like our actual brain is changing and is different, but there's such an intuitive understanding of what is needed and is what is felt. And we know as postpartum caregivers, we know as people who study conscious postpartum care with, different traditions that are far older than what we have generally available to us here in the West, is that when things are put in place, the right types of results just begin to happen. People feel more connected. They feel more bonded with their babies. Yeah. What's coming up for you, Siena and Eunique, as you're listening to Shelley?
Thanks for bringing this topic just up. And Shelley, I remember where we first met. We had a conversation a few months back about just postpartum clients. So good to see you again. But I think something that I've just really been in exploration, looking at postpartum and looking at the way we care for postpartum people, and the connections that I have learned through trauma therapy and trauma studies, and really seeing that there's a correlation to just transition in general. I think that when we say the word trauma, it gets magnified and it feels scary and it feels big. But sometimes it's not as extensive as maybe the ways that we enter utilizing this word. So looking at, I've been studying a lot of Dr. Gabor Mate, and he defines trauma as something that happens inside of us. So whenever I'm looking at postpartum, I'm looking at postpartum really from a lens of, it is, in a sense, like birth is a trauma. It is something that happens to us. It's something that happens inside of us. And so looking at the way that we care for postpartum people and the way that we're setting up to, help them navigate this transition and this change and to heal and to have successful outcomes. As Shelley mentioned, going back to Indigenous ways, looking across cultures and looking at the ways that people are and have been caring for people for hundreds of thousands of years. The ways that have been most successful have always been communal. So looking at not isolating people, but bringing them in closer, holding them in tighter, and empowering them by allowing them space to rest, to heal, to fall apart, to ask for what they need, to provide what they need when they can't ask for it. And I think that that's something that's really vital, and that we still haven't really arrived to a place of, if we coin it this, to a place of success within our society in postpartum care. Because I feel like right now there are things that are starting to grow and elevate, but there still is this sense of disconnection in the postpartum care because of the way that we operate as a capitalistic society. So we come into birth as if it's a job. You get pregnant, you navigate through the pregnancy, you check off the things that you need to check off to make sure that you have a successful pregnancy and a successful birth. And then you navigate into this postpartum period. And for people that are lucky and people that maybe have connection or community or resources, they may have someone present, as Shelley mentioned, for the first 6 weeks, the first 40 days. And then often that care goes away. Families return to their space, your doulas return or move on to other clients, your resources run out, and then you're still left in this state of overwhelm. You're still left in this state of needing care and needing connection and community. And so that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. And, Christine, you and I have had a few talks about this over the year. Of my brain's just been spinning about, how do we hold people longer, and how do we as a society and as a community and as caretakers and caregivers, how do we really shift the way that we are caring for each other and treating it in ways that really provide longer lasting effects? And so I've been looking at my studies of trauma therapy and the way that we utilize embodiment work, somatics, things that we've used for PTSD, and kind of paralleling that to postpartum people in the sense of our brains are shifting, as Shelley mentioned, things are happening inside of our bodies as postpartum people. And how do we work with people and provide them tools and resources that they can apply on their own, but also provide them deeper connections with communities that allow them. And a part that I feel like we don't openly talk about enough, is something that we need as we're going through our healing state, is love and connection to other people. That's a vital part of the healing process that I think is missed in postpartum care, or isn't amplified, I should say.
Yeah, I think when it comes to just the huge transition of being in the postpartum time, it's really important for that integration to happen in the space of others, where they're able to actually recognize the huge shift after the initial shift. So like you're saying, Eunique, after those 6 weeks, or those even just 4 weeks, I'll say, because once that hype has died down, there is almost a pressure on the birthing person to perform, and there's this performance that this need to perform that comes up. And I think that it can be kind of hard in navigating that in a culture that really values performance and really values, overworking yourself and saying like, it's been 4 weeks and I'm up already and I'm ready to go back to work and I'm snapped back, and especially with social media and all of the things. And so that further influences the people that are around us supporting the, postpartum person, and creates this dynamic that is really untrue. And so for me, I'm always thinking about what ways can we normalize rest and normalize, this portal that the family is really in during this time. And I think that the more that we the more that we speak about postpartum in general with people, whether they're pregnant, not pregnant, just speaking about it, speaking about the value, even the neuroplasticity attribute of it, like depending on who you're talking to, being able to just integrate that into conversation as if it's just a normal, thing. And someone doesn't necessarily have to be pregnant to have those conversations. And I think that that's really important, especially as a birth doula. Like my main work right now is birth. And so anytime anyone mentions pregnancy to me or says, oh, I have a pregnant friend, or anything that has to do with babies, anything, I always mention postpartum. And I've even had people being like, oh yeah, my mom had postpartum depression. I know about postpartum. No, that's not what we're talking about, right? And so just educating at any opportunity that you have, making it a part of your life, not only a part of your work, but if you really want to shift the paradigm, you have to make it something that is just the norm that you speak on, just like it's the norm for people to speak on the weather or a football game or whatever it may be. So yes, that's something that I think is very, very vital, just normalizing it in conversation, professionals or not.
So true, because I think Eunique brought up the capitalist society. This is the framework that we have to find some solutions within right now. And that is like the biggest challenge. So Siena, I was thinking about that before, like absolutely having people who can start those conversations, invite our clients into those conversations. Shelley, like talking about how the brain actually changes, and as much as we can, bringing some celebration around how beautiful and phenomenal that actually is. There has to be like a balance of, there's so much negative, that maybe it's like part of our opportunity that we have as postpartum caregivers to be celebrating what is actually happening naturally. Like nature has provided this shift to us. So let's give some positive messaging.
Yeah, that's where our conversation went. We talked about how amazing it is, and how when a postpartum mother has her community and is well cared for, and she really doesn't have to go into her prefrontal cortex, and there's not a lot of stimulation in her environment, and she can really just be in the primal part of her brain, then she thrives. And so, but when she, the interesting thing about the culture, and when we start talking about body blaming, what you and I got into was that so I've been reading about neuroplasticity for many, many years. And finally, just in the last couple of years, I start finding these articles that are written by people that are neuroscientists, and they're talking about the postpartum brain specifically. And I get so excited. And then the articles almost always lead to this, which is, and that's why there's such a propensity towards postpartum depression. And that's why 80% of moms gets the postpartum blues. And so I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, this is taking the blame off of the dysfunctional society and onto the body, again, the mother's body, the female body, which has been the blame and like demonized since. I literally brought some facts about how long the female body has been, the source of problems in the world, and according to the patriarch. And one example I can give you is, 4,000 years ago, you had what a common belief was that if you had a uterus in your body, you were at high risk of hysteria. Hence the word hysterectomy, which we still use to this day. So, Plato, 400 BCE, said the head is the divinest part of which controls the rest, and the body is a convenient vehicle. And then Parmenides, back in 500 BCE, said, don't trust your senses. They will deceive you. Only reason can lead you to truth. So getting cut off from the body, and particularly, feminine intuition, wisdom, maternal instincts, all these things are from the body, is something so deeply conditioned for so many thousands of years that it just comes out. Like, I was reading this book. This is actually a really great book, by the way, Like a Mother. And I'm actually recommending it to my clients because it's a really lovely just narrative of a woman who's a feminist. She's a journalist and she's a feminist, and she just talks about how she just discovered different cultural aspects of pregnancy and birth and postpartum and different scientific information in here. But even she, I caught her. She said she was speaking in the terms of postpartum mothers in general, but she said, we are emotional and hormonal messes. It's a fact of postpartum life. There are biological underpinnings to these mood swings. So it was very insidious, but it's like, there's that blame. Oh, postpartum brains, we're messes, whatever. And it's like, but what if I kind of think about the work that I do and I track the moms I'm working with, and sometimes I'm hired for 3 weeks or 6 weeks, but they're being held, they're being fed in their bed, they're being massaged every day, and their bellies are being bound, and they're being cared for, and they're not going out and running errands. And what I observe is they're not getting the baby blues, and they're not a mess. And of course it's challenging. There's struggles, but we're all there together, and we cross those thresholds together, and they just become stronger and wiser from those challenges. They don't become, psychotic. So that's just what I wanted to say about how we can use the science, like what you said, Christine, is like, celebrate it. And wow, how intelligent is this body? It is designed for us to attach and bond, to awaken maternal instincts. And yet it's so challenging in this culture because moms are pretty much abandoned. They're kind of on their own in general. So.
Well, I think that's, one thing that I feel so blessed that we have this understanding from, the Ayurvedic perspective, which really helps us to see the different qualities come into the play for very specific reasons. Like, the body does things for a reason. And so during postpartum, we understand that it's the qualities of air and space that are heightened for a reason. We're supposed to be on this really subtle plane. We're supposed to have those influences so that we can kind of meet our babies on this subtle, beautiful plane. So we need to remove ourselves from that analytical, sort of very pitta, going place, fiery trajectory of productivity. Like we have to step back from that. So yeah, I'm just always reminded, like, continuously how beautiful that understanding of the human condition shifts based on where we are in life, and how vital it is that we really go to that subtle place and really try to settle into it. And I think that having that, and I, it's easy to joke, like, oh, mom brain, like it's easy, I've said them myself, we've, like, I think laughter and kind of jokey is like one way of how we sort of cope with like difficulty sometimes as human beings. But I think with clients, there's an opportunity right there to be like, oh, your brain is perfect right now, and let me tell you why. And just giving them that other perspective, so then they can be like, oh yeah, like I'm supposed to be forgetting things like that because that's not important right now.
Yeah, that was one of my talking points tonight, was one of the ways we all do it, right? Just use the term mommy brain in a derogatory way. And that's part of our language. And language is so powerful, and it is the seed of, our beliefs, and it perpetuates that. And so maybe we can flip that, like, paradigm of the mommy brain is actually this brilliantly designed, primal, incredibly intuitive and wise, time to have, rather than, no, we're not supposed to be multitasking. We're not supposed to be checking emails and doing all these things.
The sacred window is an idea that we can all find ourselves in need of during times of our lives where we are tender, in need of extra care, and transforming our understanding of self. The concepts of care we give to new parents can be applied to ourselves in honor of ourselves to build resilience and grace in how we navigate this life.
Yeah, I think I love like the points that you brought up, Shelley. And I think something to really think about and consider if we're looking at, the shaming and the blaming that our culture perpetuates, either directly or indirectly. A big place to start is looking at how we operate as a culture and a society outside of the birthing space, outside of, the birthing body. And we can see that that's just our general norm. That's how we operate as a society, of putting pressure, of performance, of overdoing, of competition. We operate very much so in a masculine way as a whole. And birth in general is a very feminine experience. And so how are we not only creating these conversations, but creating tools and resources and systems that allow people and like welcome people as individuals and families and communities into being more feminine, into be softer, and to being more gentle. And that's not a gendered perspective. That's very much so a way, an essence, a way of being, and a way that I feel like is really accessible. Looking at, we can't dramatically shift our society, in one birth or in even in the next 100 years. Like, this is a long haul game. This is generations and generations. And that's why I think it's important to look back at Indigenous ways and look across cultures to see how other people and other cultures are doing things, and to really explore how can we incorporate all types of cultural situations into remolding, like, the way that our culture has developed, and the way that our society runs. And just bringing us closer back to nature and closer back to really becoming whole humans by becoming communities and societies. And I think something that we're starting to do, but hasn't really stuck, is putting more emphasis on the planning for postpartum, normalizing what the postpartum experience looks and feels like and how it can be navigated, and making it really normal to be broken or to be wounded or to need help, because we all need help. We all need help from time to time. We all need help at various moments throughout the month and throughout the year. I think teaching bodies that bleed and bodies with uteruses how our body operates month to month, starting there before people are becoming pregnant. Like, how is your body navigating? Normalizing that PMS is not a bad thing, like PMS is a signal. Our bodies change every single month, and our bodies go through similar changes every single month. And I believe that those changes are prevalent, and they're innate inside of us to prepare us for the changes that we endure during birth and the changes that we go through and navigate through postpartum into menopause and preparing for death and dying. And it's very normal in our society to oppose change and to try to create these like systems and these boxes and rigidity, because that's a very masculine way of operating. You figure out a problem and you run it like a machine. But the thing that we all know is bodies are not machines. The word that you brought into this conversation, Shelley, it's like everything's placid. We're constantly shifting, we're constantly changing. And with each event that we go through and that we experience, that only expands the way that our body shifts and changes. And the more we try to stay in a rigid system, like the more pain our body endures, the more time we have to dedicate to healing. And so if we eliminate that by pre-planning, or at least minimize it, right? Like we can't eliminate pain, we can't eliminate traumas, we can't eliminate illness or disease, but we can minimize it by being more prepared. We can minimize it by coming more together as a community, and we can minimize it by expanding education and access to support. So I don't know if there's ever like a full answer to anything, but I think, talking about how our brains change and talking about how our bodies change and making these parts of the preconception conversation and making these parts of the pregnancy and perinatal period really prepares us better for postpartum, because not everyone's going to have a full community around them. But if we have a better understanding of what may happen in our own unique experience, we have more tools to be like, hey, like maybe I don't have, X amount of dollars to hire 10 different people to come and like nurture me, but I can understand that this is going to be the most important thing for me in my experience based on my past and based on what I've noticed in my body that changes month to month.
Eunique, I love so much what you said about just using those experience, like you mentioned PMS, as a signal of change and how to move through different changes in your bodies, and actually using these different experiences that our body moves through as lessons really for how to cope with the experience of birth and postpartum and all of the changes that we experience within our uterus. And I think that the more education that we have around shifting the narrative, like it's okay to be in discomfort, it's okay to celebrate that. And going back to what you said, Christine, that celebration aspect, I think, is so crucial in the preparation, in saying that you can celebrate the discomfort and knowing that its purpose is for you to rest and for you to bond, and knowing that it really does have a purpose. And I think that when we speak to our clients in that way and just reframe that, it can be really helpful. And I mean, the earlier that we can get that kind of narrative to people, really the better. I feel like even in sex education, it should be spoken of, the postpartum time and the relation of the postpartum time to the first time that you're bleeding. You know, like these things go hand in hand. Like you said, there's nothing that's stagnant. You're constantly changing. And in our culture, we want to like stay in this one space of pre-pregnant, fresh, like after we got our period. It's like, no, we're avoiding the menopause. It's like, this is beautiful wheel that's turning, and we have to shift into that and honoring our bodies, truly honoring our bodies. They're so amazing that they're able to do all these things. And when we change our perspective and speak about our bodies differently, instead of viewing it as like there's something wrong or blaming our bodies for not cooperating with our lifestyles that are not, our lifestyles aren't even conducive to our bodies, you know? And so it's like this friction that happens. So back to what I was originally saying is just having the conversations, changing the narrative, you know, especially in young people, I feel like is really, really important. And at any point that you can do it, I mean, being able to view something that is seemingly negative, like bleeding or trauma, like you said, Uni, there has to be it has to be more expansive than what it is right now. It definitely does.
A question I want to just probe or like bring to surface is how do we present that to male bodies, right? Like how do we present this same mentality to partners, to cis men? Because we can sit in rooms all day as like, you know, groups of women and heal ourselves and heal these dynamics and create these wonderful concepts of how we can shift society, but we're only a part of it. And it very much so needs to be a collaboration. So a lot of conversation about body shaming and about, you know, the ways that we operate and treat female bodies, there's an exclusion of men and the pain and the trauma and the stress that they're enduring that in part they're just amplifying and putting on us. So something I think about a lot is how do we, as we're working with, you know, birthing people, as we're working with female bodies, how do we include rather than excluding? How do we include and bring in these male counterparts, this opposite dynamic into this space and allow them to be nurtured and allow them space to soften so that there's greater understanding, so that there's greater connection to the experience that's happening here, so that there is more space for healing, so that there is more support and more community, and more communion.
I have a response to your question. So I've worked with a lot of couples in my birthing from within classes over the years. And what really speaks to the partners, particularly the men, is talking about neuroscience, talking about, you know, the biophysiology of birth, talking about how the mother-baby dyad doesn't just end at birth. It continues for 6 weeks and on, you know. And when you kind of speak to them in these more like concrete scientific ways, it really resonates with them. But then take it to the next level, you know, and then when they understand that they're not in this space anymore, they're in their amygdala. You can speak their language of, you know, it's a brain science thing. And then you can also, it's like a portal into, and it's like a trance. They go into a trance space, a dimension that you have never seen your wife in your life. And if they can understand, that helps me to take them to the deeper level. So if you want to be their rock, in labor, if you want to be their rock during postpartum time, because they're still in that same primal place. It's not like after the birth, the trance is gone. They're just in a slightly different trance state. If you want to be that for them, then you need to learn these caregiving techniques. And they want that. They want to be the rock. They understand, oh, I can't just go up to her and talk to her when she's in the middle of a contraction because she's not here. And if they understand that, then they'll respect that, and they'll wait, and they'll lower their voice and talk to her in between, and so birth is the rehearsal for the postpartum time for the partners. And when they're well prepared, and so in my classes, I teach them caregiving skills. I teach them, we actually physically do it. I teach them that, they're going to only have, when they're in 9-10 centimeters, they learn about dilation, everything. They love to have the concrete. I mean, everybody needs to know like the basics of how labor works. Once they have that, okay, now how do I be in that space? Okay, she's 9 centimeters. She has 1 minute before the next contraction comes. And my job is to make sure she sleeps, and she goes into sleep and rest and takes a sip, and she's completely gone into her deep, deep sleep to wake up and do it the same thing a minute later. So they know how to do caregiving during the most intense phase of the birthing person's life. And then they carry that into the postpartum time because it's the same thing. The continuum, the dyad is the same. And the first week, if you think about, if you guys understand how the cervix dilates, you would go from 0 to 10, and transition is the most intense, and then pushing. But think about it this way. The birth of the mother is 6 weeks. So the birth of the baby takes a day. Okay, or 2, or 3, or 4, if you're unlucky. But the birth of the mother, the initial, just the intensity of labor and birthing a mother takes 6 weeks. We're continually birthing ourselves as a mother as we evolve. But the intense part takes the first 6 weeks. So if we use that same map of dilation and apply it to sort of even the physiology, the uterus takes 6 weeks to reduce back down. Obviously the cervix has gone back down very quickly, but psychologically the map is the same, only it's reversed. So you have that first week, she's 10 centimeters, all hands on deck. You would never leave a birthing mother alone in labor, birthing her baby at 10 centimeters. It's all hands on deck. So same thing with the first week after birth. It's like all hands on deck. She can't do a lot of things. Pretty much only thing she can do is just connect with her baby and feed her baby. Maybe take a shower. And then it goes, okay, week 2, we're looking at, wow, she's like, we're getting a rhythm. We're like 7 centimeters now. Week 3, it's like, all right, we're in active labor. We're really like, things are kind of cruising along. By the time you get to week 6, it's like, oh, we're 0 centimeters, or, we're 1 centimeter now. And we're back online in our prefrontal cortex a little bit. And we're able to balance the two, caretaking and maybe a little bit of work, or whatever. So that's how I teach, the partners, just to answer your question. They like the science, and then you can take it down into the feminine realm of, this is the way the feminine works. This is the birth energy. This is the postpartum energy.
I love that. I just love so much of what I've been listening to. Thank you so much to each of you guys. Yeah, Uni, I think there's a huge opportunity here to like really start thinking about first of all, like acknowledging what's missing for partners. Like, what are they not getting, which is so much. And maybe we need to create it, maybe it's part of our businesses, like Shelley's doing, is really creating space and talking right to partners, because they are such a huge part of it. And while I'm always like reminding, students and, myself too, that like this, it's not a one person job. You guys have really brought up a lot tonight about community and Oh my gosh. And Uni, I also just want to like speak back to, inviting more feminine into outside of birth and postpartum, like outside, like into every aspect of how we live, how we work, like what do our businesses look like, how are our extended friend spaces, like where are we creating feminine structures, like I think of just how we sort of put expectations on ourselves for things like productivity or putting things out there. There's so much masculine expectation and influence in all of that. And you're right, like we're not going to change the culture. So how can we do our best for ourselves? And I think how we do our best in interacting with life just naturally influences the people that we come in contact with, and how our relationships go, how our professional, relationships with our clients go. And there's a lot of joy there, because when I think about feminine energy and all those other places, it's like a release of pressure. It's a release of holding a lot in these very contained boxes when it wants to be nonlinear. It wants to be shifting and moving, and like letting go of, trying to like hold the ocean waves back. Like it's too hard. We can't do it well. And we're always going to feel like a little bit like we're coming up short. Yeah, and Siena, just talking about having those conversations earlier, I think that is a huge opportunity. I think you and I was telling you that my oldest is 14, and he's starting this amazing program where they're talking about sex education. And it's so much more than just sex. There's like really, really powerful messaging that can come through here. And when kids at those young, formative years are starting to, really hear and listen, and they hear things over and over, because, I'm sure during my pregnancy, people told me about postpartum, but I wasn't really listening because I'd never heard about it before. I was real like, it's going to be fine. Like I'm really focused on my birth, and postpartum will be fine. But when you hear those things more than once, when you have witnessed and experience those conversations, it starts to just infuse and weave itself into your understanding of life. So when we understand that this time period is going to be hard, it's supposed to be hard. It's a huge transition. And, earlier on, you mentioned it as like a trauma. And I appreciate that there is like a fear behind that word. And I also really understand that anyone who goes through such an enormous transition of becoming a parent, that needs to be taken seriously. And I envision a significance of that being echoed back to the birth giver from community. Like, you are changed and we see you, and you are so amazing for what you have just done. And yes, this is hard. I know that this is a really hard time. And I know that, you're putting some pressure on yourself, and, your body is changing, and it's like supposed to be that way. And it's so beautiful. But I think if we can sort of encourage that acknowledgement as a larger, wider community of just how beautiful and significant we see that to be, that is something that influences people on that subtle level where they are of, okay, yeah, it's hard, but other people also, they've got, a pulse on it. They can see it, and it's not just me.
Yeah, amplifying your points, Christine, and just like in reflection, like normalizing that our body shifts and changes, like starting in youth, like Siena brought into the conversation. That's so huge, because in our youth, we're taught to deny our bodies. We're taught to disconnect from our bodies. We're taught to shame our bodies. We're taught to shame other people's bodies. And beginning with our youth, and beginning like as early as possible with, this is normal, this is normal, this is normal. And normal looks different every single time. Normal is fluid, and that's okay. normal is fluid, and that's okay. And I think that that is such a beautiful gift that a parent can have, right? Because you have the opportunity to empower the little ones that you are directly in contact with. I mean, we can't control how society operates, but we can, as doulas, as caretakers, we can also empower our clients so that they can empower their children. And I think that that's such a beautiful gift that we can hold.
My heart right now is like so blown up. That's so true. The rollover and thinking about that, how our words that we give to our clients, our messages that we give, our experience that we're able to, or their experience, our experience collectively, that we're able to just hold space for, how that is going to be a story that's told. And that's really powerful. Christine, I know you love storytelling. And so, the storytelling within families is so powerful, and that can transform society. I really do believe it can. And thinking about our role as caregivers and how we're so focused on just our family that we're working with, sometimes we don't even notice that it transfers over generationally. We haven't been able to see it yet because we're dealing with babies and mamas, but it's going to, and it is transferring over generationally, and that is so powerful. And yes, so thank you for making that point. I love that.
I want to invite anyone who has, I see some things in the chat here. If you have an idea or a thought, you've been listening to this conversation or a question, you can go ahead and type it into the chat with me. And thank you guys for the love. I'm seeing a lot of hellos and hearts. And so, one thing I'm going to pose to you guys is, I'm seeing a question here. Is birth considered a trauma if the birthing person is fully engaged and an eager participant in the process? Eunique said birth is traumatic. If everything goes as planned, is it traumatic?
Well, since I'm the one that said that, I can expand on what my perception is and my usage of that word. I believe birth to be a trauma because a trauma is something that happens inside of us. A traumatic event is something that happens outside of us, right? So a birth, I believe to be a trauma because it is something that happens inside the body and changes and morphs the way the body functions and the way the brain functions. But not every birth is a traumatic event. Some births are traumatic events and some births may not be, but still the body is enduring those changes and the brain is enduring those changes either way. Some people may navigate through their birth with greater ease than other people, but the healing process is still part of the process, regardless if it's a traumatic event or not.
Yeah, I'll just expand on that a little bit. I have some background in birth trauma healing, and I think maybe what is also helps to clarify is that there's sort of a difference between emotional trauma and physical trauma. So physical trauma is a wound, an injury, and some women come through the birth experience, especially if it's your third or fourth baby, without a lot of injury. There is stretching, but sometimes women don't even tear in birth, So it is you can use the word, it's traumatic as in it's just a huge, massive event that's happening in your body, like great, massive changes. It's the closest we come to death in life. You could use it in that way, in a sense of like the body is undergoing great dramatic change. But I think what maybe the person who is commenting might be referring to is the emotional trauma, which is it. So yeah, and Gabor Mate, he also defines trauma as it's a wound, and and when we touch that wound, so if we touch a physical wound that's really raw and open, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna fester, it's gonna make it worse. So if we have a moment in the birth where somebody didn't show up for us, a practitioner did something that we asked them not to do, if there was something like that that happened in the birth, this could cause emotional trauma. Or if the birth went a way that they didn't want it to go, and they had to make choices that they were hoping to avoid, and they feel like their body failed them because of that. They really wanted an unmedicated birth and had a cesarean, and so there could be some, because their pre-birth wish did not happen, that could cause emotional trauma. So yeah, I just think it's a very complex, layered thing. I love Eunice's perspective on it, and it's just a very complex thing. And emotional trauma is connected with physical trauma, but sometimes it's also something that is not connected to the physical trauma, if that makes sense. It could be just a word somebody said. It could be a labor nurse who said something well-intentioned, but it landed wrong in that moment, and it planted a seed of, I can't do it. I need the epidural or whatever.
Yeah, and I think, something that I also think about is how trying to define trauma as this one definition, that's again like a very putting a box around it, and we can't do that. Uni was expressing earlier, what I'm hearing too from you, Shelley, is it's going to be experienced differently for every person, and when we can sort of just allow that to be undefined in a way like that, feels really empowering and supportive. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'm seeing recognize the huge shift after the initial shift. Yeah, I think that there's Natalie, I'm trying to remember what that was in reference to, but I think what comes up for me too is we go through so much, but we're still not done, and such. It's continuously rebirthing itself. Regina says, I can truly remember that my grandmother helped my mother after birth, and my mother helped me, but only 2 weeks, maybe 3. I think it would have been looked down on if I asked for longer. Yeah, and I really can resonate with that too, because even knowing what I know about the postpartum window and having gone through one myself 4 times, it still feels hard to ask for help, because that's sort of taking ourselves out of, this very independent place of being that our culture is, and becoming dependent on other people. And that takes some getting used to, and some practice, and some shifting around how we look at that. Is that putting other people out, or is it claiming some empowered choice for ourselves? Maybe that in itself is a radical decision, to be I'd actually love for you to stay for a month, and I would like it to look like this, and I need you, and I want you here. And how, I think if we look at it in terms of what we think society's expectations are of us versus what we want it to be about, actually, those two are actually really different things.
I wanted to say that also that goes with preparation too, being able to ask for what you want, because you are in such a vulnerable state, especially in those first couple of weeks. That's not really the time to boss up, it's just not the time to boss up. So having those conversations and preparing for that bossing up ahead of time, is really, really important, because it is hard already to do that. And then plus now you have a baby, plus you're tired, plus you're questioning, like, should I really be feeling like I need help? And so I think that if we're even sensing that from our client, from our clients, it's really important to just reaffirm, like you were saying earlier, Christine, that this is the way your brain is supposed to be working, and offering the help, and just reaffirming that this is the process. Ask for what you need. What do you need? Do you know what you need? How can we, move through this together? I think is really important, because a lot of us are not able in that postpartum time to ask for what we want. We in our normal lives, we don't do that. And so it's really important to keep that in mind. Like, these are real people. As much as we want to have them be empowered and all of these things, it's like we're so vulnerable during those times. We really have to keep that in mind and check in, and make those connections. It's very, very important.
I love that. I love that you called it boss up, Siena.
So true.
Yeah, I think that I was just gonna say, I just feel like that is part of our cultural shift, right? Like, how are we preparing in like our day-to-day lives to like make more space to ask and to receive? And the pre-planning is so important. And the pre-planning even just starts with like daily boundary work, or daily, like personal development, which is like such a strange word, but it is what it is.
Just like we have birth classes, we need classes for postpartum preparation, full on, to really prepare the psyche, the soul, the mind, the body, everything, the family.
Yeah, I think it's really an opportunity as professionals in this field that we can find a balance of education and raising awareness, and really like creating some conversations with our communities and with our clients, and providing caregiving. Because the more I spend time in this space, the more I see that it's not really separate. Like, we have to do one if we want to be able to successfully do the other. And it'll look different for each of us, because we're all different humans. So how we engage our communities, can be really different based on who we are, which I love too. I just am so filled up by all of your thoughts tonight. Thank you so much, Siena, Eunique, Shelley. Thank you. This has been really special. And thank you to all of you for being here for this whole time. I know we've gone over a little bit. And I'm going to follow up this talk with an email to our registrants with the recording. And I urge you to send along any questions that have come up for you along the way. And remember, this is a space for you. So whether you would like to become part of our professional membership, whether you want to deepen your study, whether you just want to be connected through our Facebook community with people who are having conversations with this, know that we're here. You can visit sacredwindowstudies.com, reach out to me, reach out to any of these amazing women doing this work. And thank you. Thank you for being here.
Shanti, Shanti.
How can you bring something sacred to your current window of time? What do you have to offer to someone within their sacred window? We honor you for all you give and for who you are. Thank you for listening. The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. Editing of our podcast recordings is done by Siena Butler, and our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.